Hi, I'm Capri. Thank you for joining me in the flagship Alaska Airlines Lounge here at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in Washington. Last year, I had the honor of managing this award-winning project's completion, and the success was hard-fought, so I have the occasional privilege of letting myself in through the back door. Now, as a superintendent, I have the ultimate responsibility for the successful delivery of my projects. We work in an industry measured by production and profit, but in my approach to success, there needs to be a consideration of pride and satisfaction on all sides, my clients, my trade partners, my crew, and my own. So today I want to share with you a vision of finding satisfaction in your career and how following your own desires is a critical component to your career success. So at some point in your career, you had a vision. And if you've never put it into clear words, you may remember it as a sense of magnetism towards the industry or towards a role. Mine is a memory from an internship. That summer, I not only found the company that I've now followed across the country for the last 13 years, but I started an internal narrative of what I thought success looked like. And in truth, it took me over 10 years to understand why this story continued to leave such a strong impression. I used to say what attracted me to construction were the interns I saw, running around talking about rats the size of cats underneath the basement slabs of the Pentagon, or how it was that summer I saw a passion for hard work could pay off in concrete results, and that I was fascinated by the job site team mentality. But I understand now it was really the impression left by a few key individuals who set the bar against which I would compare myself year after year. There were keywords: confident, respected, commanding. You know, when somebody walks into the room and everybody stops and waits to see what will happen. The highest example of a leader. Composed. A brilliant builder with a physical presence. These were the characteristics I saw in the superintendents. So for those first 10 years, becoming a superintendent was a goal to which I would never quite commit. I would think about it as the role that represented the greatest feeling of accomplishment. But in my performance evaluations, I would opt instead to promote my flexibility, to contribute to the organization as my management saw fit, looking for someone maybe to choose a role for me as if they could better divine my worth. Now, I was very successful. I worked as hard as women in the industry need to work to establish their value. But this was the narrative I told myself. I'm not confident enough. I'm respected, but not in the way a superintendent should be, because I'm not always commanding. I don't always like a leader. I lean emotional more than composed at times. And maybe I don't have enough builder background. Oh, and I'm 5'1" tall. My best mentors and supporters did not look like me. And I was stuck looking for ways to connect with a vision that for me represented success, power, and fulfillment. Now, 3 years ago, something changed. I was in another conversation about my career, and the role of superintendent was again offered. I was extremely lucky to have advocates that supported me because a year earlier I had flat out declined the position when postpartum anxiety made the thought of being responsible for 300 lives on site unthinkable. Well, this time I asked to reflect. I consulted mentors from across the country about a motivational calendar called You Are a Badass, and then I accepted the position. Where I'm going with this is that I had started to recognize something needed to change if I was going to be successful. And it turns out it wasn't me. Okay, so here's where we start the work. I'm going to have a quick screen change. There we go. Perfect. It turns out there was a disconnect, a misalignment between my vision and myself. There were characteristics on that model superintendent checklist that did not align with my strengths, my motivation, or my desires. My vision of success, power, and fulfillment needed to be reworked if I was going to move forward. And this session is really focused on how you can assess and possibly redefine your vision. Doing just that centered me and gave me the ability to focus my energy and enhance my natural strengths to achieve and impact more than I thought was possible. So that first step was reflecting on the past. What strengths had contributed to my success up until this point in my career? These were the traits, the values, or the actions that have brought achievement and recognition. For me, they included things like detail-oriented, skilled at written and verbal communication, determined, high social intelligence, takes accountability, is a team builder. These are the metrics you might see rated on a performance evaluation. They are the skills and attitudes that come naturally to you. Now, while mine had carried me through years of learning and gained experience on my projects, I was now facing an opportunity that required more from me. So if you were going to take a minute to jot down your top 10 strengths, or if you were going to go online and take one of the lengthy strength assessments, you would have an enviable list of traits that could be applied to a number of career pursuits. But your vision isn't usually about a variety of options. It's about the application of these strengths, taking action, and moving forward towards a very specific vision of yourself. So I'm working in this framework of success, power, and fulfillment. Step 1 to achieving your vision was accounting for your strengths. This helps us to acknowledge what we do well. Now, step 2 is about finding your power, defining our motivation to claim ownership of our behaviors and our feelings. And we'll get to step 3, which is identifying the ways you choose to use your power to impact the world. So step 2, the big epiphany came from the discovery of my motivation. As someone who was standing on the edge of accepting a new role, why did I want to be here? This was the area that held the great disconnect. I was evaluating foundations of my nature as failures against the bar I had established. For example, I'd think, superintendents lead their teams with brilliant solutions. But, I'd counter, my style is more about facilitation of others' ideas and making sure I recognize the needs of all the people in the room. I saw these as opposing approaches, and by dismissing who I was unknowingly holding myself back. I was completely undermining the power I didn't even know I had before step 2. And this realization of power started with a mantra. Well, I'm going to call it a mantra because it was a statement that resonated with something deep inside me. It created a rare opportunity for self-reflection and connection. And these magical words, well, they came to me late one night shift when I was treating myself to candy from the resident engineer's candy bowl in his office. It was a Dove Special dark chocolate, and if you're not familiar with the candy, they contain wisdom. No, seriously, the inside of their wrappers have quotes on them. And one of the candies I ate, the wrapper said this: "Don't stop until you're proud." These words struck deeply at the core of why I cared so much. They exposed why I held myself to specific standards of work and to the expectations of my performance as a teammate and as a leader. So ask yourself, have you ever found words to describe your motivation? It's not easy, but it turns out there's a science behind why this is so important. Leadership guru Simon Sinek calls the motivation your why. He relates the concept of why to the section of our brains that's responsible for behavior, decision-making, and feelings. So knowing your why provides a filter through which you can make decisions every day and act with purpose. Understanding your why gives us the clarity to find the jobs, the relationships, the communities, and the roles that allow us to operate at our natural best. And that was the clarity that I experienced. Up until this point, I had been driven by, fear of failure, rejection by others, or a strongly bred spirit of competition. So I was rather astounded by the realization that my motivation was something I wanted for myself. Discovering a motivation that was so self-reliant was extremely empowering. There was an immediate ownership of my values and an accountability to myself for my actions and my decisions. And rooted in this power, my confidence as a superintendent, my daily decisions, and the application of my strengths came much more naturally. Let's have another screen change. And we'll recap where we've gotten so far. Great. So our strengths are our established traits, values, and habits that have produced our success. Take time to consider if there's a misalignment between your natural strengths and your vision of success. Step 2, by understanding your why, you will wield greater power from your strengths. Connecting with your true motivation ties your actions, your decisions, and your feelings to a strong personal power. Step 3, with the recognition that fulfillment comes from having a clear sense and purpose for why we do what we do, we can choose to use our power to positively impact our role, our industry, and world in ways that also align with our desires. In other words, when you're driven by a motivation that enhances your natural strengths, you multiply your impact when you choose to do the things you want to do. Okay, so back to my story. I chose to accept the promotion to project superintendent. I was now in charge of my $450 million project, and as my mentors had assured me, my daily responsibilities were being satisfied by the strengths that earned me the title. But here in step 3, there was more growth happening. In another moment of divine intervention, my daily motivational calendar urged next steps. And backed by my newly found motivation, I understood that this next chapter of my career would require decisive movement towards a realigned vision. So here's what that calendar read. You are a badass. The old you, the one who has not yet decided to kick ass, is in the past. Stay present and do not, even for a second, look backwards or entertain any ideas of straying from your decision. Think only of the new you. So this new vision started forming in unexpected ways. When I became a project superintendent, I became immediately and acutely aware of my unique position within the industry, and thus the power and responsibility of my voice. My vision started to change from how I had envisioned others seeing me to how I saw myself serving others. In alignment with my strengths, the new vision represented the impact I wanted to create. So on site, I consider myself a facilitator of solutions. I can motivate a frustrated foreman to exercise their creativity and problem solve with other trades. I leverage my awareness of each crew's goals to ensure they receive feedback when plans need to change. I enjoy making connections and being involved in the latest coordination. Now, don't get this confused with being an extrovert or being a social butterfly, because I'm not. It was extremely surprising for me when a vision started to form that was focused on building connections within the greater industry. And maybe it shouldn't have been so surprising, considering strengths of communication and my team building and empathy skills, but that's why we're talking about aligning your vision. So I started to identify local organizations that might benefit from my voice and from my connections. With volunteering at my local chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction, that led to a director position on their board, which led to volunteer work with a local pre-apprenticeship program that serves women and minorities. Now, a separate invitation to co-chair a new industry task force that was focused on the alarming statistics of suicide in construction, that led to an opportunity with a large labor union organization to collaborate on their new nationwide rollout of Culture of Care, which provided education and resources for respectful workplaces. So on one hand, I had initiatives that could use my voice as a female in the field to raise opportunities for other women and minorities. On the other hand, I had this emerging focus on mental health in the construction industry. Now, through my increasing involvement with these industry groups and initiatives, I'm starting to see glimpses of my new vision. And in my journey so far, I've learned 2 lessons that are worth sharing. First, I will play a role in changing the industry. The 2 seemingly separate missions of supporting minority representation in the industry and supporting mental health awareness actually fit perfectly together under the umbrella of psychological safety. This is a topic that's been pretty hot in the domains of higher education, tech, and organizational management since Google published the findings of their groundbreaking Aristotle project in 2016. It was a study that determined psychological safety to be the primary driver of team effectiveness. Amy Edmondson of Harvard Business School describes psychological safety as a sense of confidence that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. There's an elimination of fear for contribution. And there are actually a few other sessions in this conference dedicated to the topic. But I have found that field management has a singular responsibility and vested interest in representing the topic. In construction, there are positive outcomes that range from enhanced crew physical safety to increased production to skilled worker retention, and getting our arms around supporting the mental health of our people and overcoming bias as an industry will require overcoming stigmas that linger from old school job site dynamics. So now, over the last few years, I've participated in, created events and programs to speak to these issues. However, it's really been a simple willingness to start conversations about mental health and overcoming bias that have created invaluable conversations and reportable industry change in these tumultuous months of 2020. My team and crew have needed a new voice to provide support, and my peers and management have needed a new voice to challenge the status quo with unique leadership in times of crisis. Now, by using my voice as a superintendent, I've also learned that being a female in construction can be quite powerful. For example, I'm not so susceptible to the stigmas that make speaking about mental health or bias so taboo in this male-dominated industry, and I'm more interested in exploring emotion. This is notable because my original vision of superintendent had downplayed my natural strengths that were more stereotypically female. I was proud to be one of the guys. My new vision will recognize the value in my female voice to speak new truths into an industry that needs to change if we're going to attract and support future generations. Okay, so my second lesson. Facilitative leadership is valid. It turns out there are books dedicated to the type of leader that I am. Now, facilitative leaders, they use active listening skills to summarize, reflect, and question. They encourage and generate discussions in groups. They manage contrasting perspectives and opinions that might result in conflict. They honor different individuals, different learning and participation styles. These skills are reflective of my natural strengths. I do not embody the stereotypical characteristics of a superintendent, the ones that drove my vision of success for so many years of my career. But I'm damn good at my job, and my crews quickly realize that they benefit from the goals of bringing pride and satisfaction to the task. So when my team crossed the finish line of this Alaska Airlines Lounge project after a very tough race, they were still excited to give each other high fives, and that is success. So to wrap up today, you'll find a time in your career where the achievement you've found up until that point does not feel like enough to take that next leap. So stop and check your natural strengths against a vision you've held for success. So a realignment might be required. And if you can connect with your core motivation, you'll find incredible strength and seek out new ways to apply yourself, driving positive change. The soul searching I started with a decision to become a project superintendent continues to be a deliberate act of self-knowing, self-acceptance, and growth. And I'll leave you with, don't stop until you're proud. Thank you.